I never thought much about personal space until Marcus started sitting closer to me on that old aluminum boat. The first time we went fishing together, he sat at the opposite end, a good 6 feet between us, both of us casting our lines into the dark water of Pine Lake. That was 3 months ago. Last Saturday, our knees were touching, and neither of us moved away. It started at work, actually. I'm a graphic designer at a mid-sized marketing firm downtown, and Marcus joined our team in early spring. He had this quiet confidence about him, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. Dark hair that always looked slightly windswept, even in the office. Green eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was good at his job, kept to himself mostly, but there was something magnetic about him that I couldn't quite name. We'd exchange pleasantries by the coffee machine, talk about client projects and meetings. Nothing extraordinary. Then one Monday, he overheard me complaining to Sarah from accounting about how I hadn't been fishing in months because my usual buddy had moved to Portland. Marcus looked up from his desk and said, "I've been wanting to check out Pine Lake. Want company this weekend?" I remember being surprised. We weren't really friends yet, just friendly colleagues, but something in his casual invitation felt genuine, uncomplicated, so I said yes. That Saturday morning, I picked him up at 6 a.m., the sky still that deep blue before dawn breaks fully. He climbed into my truck with a thermos of coffee and this boyish grin that made him look younger than his 32 years. The drive to the lake took about 40 minutes, and we filled it with easy conversation. He told me about growing up in Michigan, how his dad taught him to fish on Lake Superior. I told him about my childhood summers at my uncle's cabin in the Ozarks. Nothing too deep, just the comfortable small talk of two people figuring out if they actually like each other outside the fluorescent buzz of office life. When we got to the lake, the sun was just starting to paint the water gold. We loaded our gear into the rental boat, and that's when I noticed it. Marcus chose the seat at the far end, maximizing the distance between us. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. That's just what guys do, right? We take up space. We spread out. We maintain our territories. We fished for about 4 hours that first day. The conversation came in comfortable waves, periods of silence broken by observations about the weather, stories about terrible bosses we'd had, debates about whether the Lakers had any chance that season. He was easy to be around. There was no performance to it, no masculine posturing. Just two guys enjoying the quiet rhythm of casting and reeling, casting and reeling. When we packed up that afternoon, Marcus said, "Same time next week?" And I found myself looking forward to it more than I wanted to admit. The second trip, 2 weeks later, he sat maybe a foot closer. I noticed, but didn't mention it. We talked more that day. He told me about his divorce, how it had been finalized 6 months ago, how his ex-wife was a good person, but they'd married too young, wanted different things. There was something raw in his voice when he talked about it, a vulnerability I hadn't expected. I shared about my own failed engagement 3 years back, how I'd realized I was going through the motions because it's what everyone expected, not because it's what I wanted. "It's like we're supposed to have it all figured out by 30, Marcus said, staring at the water. "Career, marriage, house, kids. And if you don't, or if you try and it doesn't work, you're somehow failing at being an adult." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Yeah, exactly like that." Something shifted between us that day. The conversation went deeper. He asked me about my photography hobby, really asked, wanted to see the shots I'd taken of the lake on my phone. I asked him about the novel he mentioned he was trying to write. We discovered we both loved old westerns, both thought True Grit was underrated, both had complicated relationships with our fathers that we were still trying to understand. By the third trip, he was sitting in the middle of the boat, not quite next to me, but close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with sunscreen. Close enough that when he laughed at something I said, I could see the exact way his eyes lit up. I found myself hyper-aware of his presence in a way that felt new and slightly terrifying. We'd fallen into a rhythm by then, every other Saturday, weather permitting. It became the highlight of my week, something I looked forward to in a way that felt disproportionate to what it was. Just fishing, just two guys sitting in a boat. But it wasn't just that anymore, and I think we both knew it. The fourth trip, it rained. We sat in the boat anyway, under a tarp, watching the drops create endless circles on the water's surface. Marcus was close enough that our shoulders almost touched when the boat rocked. He told me about his younger brother, who died in a car accident when Marcus was 19. How he still had dreams where his brother was alive, and waking up felt like losing him all over again. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. Sometimes that's all you can do. When he finished talking, his voice rough with old grief, he looked at me and said, "I don't usually tell people that about Jake." "I'm glad you told me," I said, and meant it completely. He nodded, and we sat there in the rain, and something unspoken passed between us. An understanding, maybe. Or a recognition. I wasn't sure what to call it. The fifth trip, Marcus sat next to me. Actually next to me, on the same bench seat. Our shoulders touched when we cast our lines. When he reached for the tackle box, his arm brushed against mine, and I felt it like electricity. He didn't move away. Neither did I. We talked about everything that day. Books, movies, childhood fears, adult anxieties, dreams we'd given up on and dreams we were too scared to pursue. He told me he'd always wanted to quit his job and write full-time, but was terrified of failing. I told him I'd been taking online classes in documentary filmmaking, but hadn't told anyone because I was afraid they'd think it was a midlife crisis. "You're 34, Marcus said, bumping my shoulder with his. "Bit early for a midlife crisis." "Maybe I'm an overachiever," I said, and he laughed that full, genuine laugh I'd come to crave hearing. As we were packing up that evening, Marcus paused, tackle box in hand. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," I said, coiling a rope. "Do you ever feel like you're waiting for your real life to start?" He wasn't looking at me, focused on securing the lid of the tackle box. "Like everything until now has just been rehearsal?" I stopped what I was doing. "Yeah," I said softly. "Yeah, I do." He looked up then, and the expression on his face was so open, so hopeful and uncertain at the same time, that my breath caught. "Me too," he said. We didn't talk much on the drive home, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like we'd said something important without actually saying it at all. The sixth trip was last Saturday. I picked Marcus up at the usual time, but something felt different from the moment he got in the truck. He was quieter than usual, seemed nervous. His knee bounced slightly as we drove, and he kept glancing at me when he thought I wasn't looking. When we got to the lake, he sat right next to me. Our thighs were touching, our knees pressed together when we shifted positions. And this time, there was no pretending it was accidental, no casual adjustment to create distance. We both just sat there, close enough to share body heat in the cool morning air. We fished in silence for a while, but it was charged, electric. Every small movement felt significant. When Marcus reached across me for a lure, his hand brushed my chest, and he murmured, "Sorry," but he didn't sound sorry. He sounded breathless. "It's okay," I said, and my voice came out rougher than intended. More silence. The sun climbing higher, the water lapping against the boat, and this tension between us that felt like it might crack the air itself. Finally, Marcus set down his rod. "I need to tell you something," he said. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Okay." He turned to face me fully, and I did the same. Our knees were still touching. He looked at our legs, at the point of contact, then back up at me. "I've been sitting closer every time we come out here," he said. "You noticed, right?" "Yeah," I said. "I noticed." I kept telling myself I was being ridiculous, that I was reading into something that wasn't there, but then I'd see you at work, and I'd count the days until Saturday. And I'd think about you when I should be thinking about other things. And I realized I wasn't being ridiculous. I was just scared. My mouth was dry. Scared of what? Of this. Of wanting something I wasn't sure I was allowed to want. Of risking this thing we have, this friendship, for something that might not be mutual. He took a shaky breath. "I'm not good at this. I don't have a lot of practice at being honest about what I want. My whole marriage was me pretending, settling, being who I thought I should be. But sitting here with you, I don't want to pretend anymore." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the warmth of his knee against mine, the vulnerability in his eyes, the way my entire body was leaning toward him, like he was gravity itself. "Marcus," I started, and then stopped, because what do you say when someone hands you their heart and you want nothing more than to keep it safe? "If I'm wrong," he said quickly. If I've misread this, just tell me. We can forget I said anything. We can go back to how things were. You're not wrong, I said, and watched his eyes widen. You're not wrong at all. I've been terrified too. Every time you sat closer, I wanted to close the rest of the distance, but I didn't know how. Didn't know if I was allowed to want this, want you. You want this? His voice was barely a whisper. I want this, I confirmed. I want you. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise. Slow, then all at once, illuminating everything. He reached out, hesitated, then placed his hand on my knee. The simple touch felt monumental. I've never done this before, he admitted. Been with a man. I don't really know what I'm doing. Neither have I said. Not really. I mean, I've known for a while that I was attracted to men, but I never acted on it. Always told myself it was easier not to, but easier isn't the same as better. No, Marcus agreed. It's really not. We sat there, hands touching, knees pressed together, just looking at each other. The fishing was forgotten. The lake, the boat, the rest of the world faded into background noise. So, what do we do now? I asked. Marcus laughed, a little nervous, a lot hopeful. I have no idea. Take it slow, figure it out together. I can do slow, I said. I'm good at slow. I've been slowly falling for you for 3 months. His breath hitched. Falling? Yeah, I said, committing to the honesty, the vulnerability. Falling. He moved then, shifting closer, and suddenly there was no space between us at all. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone, and the tenderness of it made my chest ache. Can I kiss you? He asked. Please, I breathed. It was soft, tentative, both of us figuring out the mechanics and the meaning simultaneously. His lips were warm and slightly chapped from the sun. He tasted like coffee and courage. When he pulled back, we were both smiling like idiots. That was, he started. Yeah, I finished. We kissed again, longer this time, more confident. His hand slid into my hair, and I gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. The boat rocked gently beneath us, and neither of us cared. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against mine. I don't want to go back to work Monday and pretend this didn't happen, he said. So we don't pretend, I said simply. We figure out what this is, together. No more hiding. No more sitting at opposite ends of the boat. I really like the sound of that, Marcus said, and kissed me again. We stayed out on the lake until sunset, talking about what comes next, about telling our friends, our families, about navigating a relationship that neither of us had expected, but both of us wanted desperately, about fears and hopes, and the terrifying, exhilarating freedom of finally being honest about who we are and what we want. As we loaded the boat back onto the trailer that evening, Marcus grabbed my hand, lacing our fingers together. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt revolutionary. We stood there in the parking lot, holding hands as the sun dipped below the horizon, and I thought about how sometimes the best things in life sneak up on you, how connection happens in increments, in the slow closing of distance, in the courage to sit a little closer each time. That night, Marcus came back to my apartment. We ordered pizza, sat too close together on my couch, and watched an old Western. Every few minutes, one of us would look at the other and smile, still slightly amazed that this was real, that we'd found this unexpected thing in each other. Same time next Saturday? Marcus asked as he was leaving, echoing that first invitation. Actually, I said, pulling him back for one more kiss, how about we don't wait that long? His smile was everything. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I'd really like that. After he left, I sat on my couch in the quiet of my apartment, touching my lips, replaying the day. 6 fishing trips, 6 incremental movements towards something true and terrifying, and more real than anything I'd felt in years. Sometimes courage isn't a grand gesture. Sometimes it's just sitting a little closer, being a little more honest, taking the risk that the person next to you might be hoping for the exact same thing. I'm not sure what comes next for Marcus and me. We're figuring it out as we go. 2 people learning how to be brave together. But I know this. Next Saturday, when we go out on the lake, there won't be any distance between us at all. And I can't wait. Total_Char underscore count 16,847.